Today we're talking about fraud in the real estate industry. There's a lot of it, and if you're the victim of it, it can be devastating. In residential real estate, there's two main kinds of fraud. There's mortgage fraud and title fraud. However, homebuyers should be aware of additional risks. Mortgage fraud is a type of identity theft where the fraudster obtains the identification of the rightful owner of a property and then takes out a mortgage in their name. Typically, it's a second mortgage behind an existing first mortgage, but either way, the fraudster absconds with the funds before the homeowner knows what's even going on. Needless to say, this can be quite expensive and quite traumatic for the homeowner. There are ways to protect against it though. In the case of mortgage fraud, because it's a form of identity fraud, the same general guidelines apply. Be aware of phishing emails and texts. Register for MyCRA and check it regularly. And check your credit with Equifax and TransUnion annually. You can sign up for programs where they'll actually send you credit reports regularly. Most people don't know this, but Land Title's office actually has two copies of your title, an original and a duplicate. Now the duplicate copy you can order and hold yourself in a secure place. The reason why you'd want to do this is because the Land Title's office cannot change the original title without changing the duplicate at the same time. If it's held off-site by you, then they cannot register a mortgage on your property. This strategy is almost bulletproof. It prevents anyone from registering a mortgage on your title. It's probably the most secure you can get. This brings us to our next form of fraud, title fraud. Title fraud is also a form of identity theft where the fraudster poses as the rightful property owner, but in this case, they approach a realtor and offer to sell the property to an unsuspecting buyer. Again, the best way to protect yourself from this type of fraud is to hold a duplicate copy of title yourself in a secure location or with a lawyer. This type of fraud raises another interesting issue because buyers have bought a property with good money in good faith and are victims of the fraud as well. The way we solve the conundrum is through what's called the torrent system, which interestingly enough was originally developed for ship owners. What happens is the buyer retains title to the property, but an assurance fund is set up so that the original owner is compensated. So if you're a victim of this type of fraud and it's not caught early, you could very well lose the property. You'll only be compensated for it financially. Either way, it's time-consuming and expensive to make a claim under the torrent system. A better strategy is to obtain title insurance. Title insurance operates much faster and is cheaper than making a claim through the assurance fund. It also mitigates against other risks, unpaid property taxes, unpaid strata fees, zoning issues, septic issues, etc., etc. Title insurance is actually required by most lenders anyway, so this is a great way to avoid this kind of fraud. Homeowners need to be aware of unscrupulous operators, particularly when cashback is involved. A particular type of fraud known as the Oklahoma involves inflated values and cashback. The Oklahoma fraud occurs when unscrupulous operators collude to sell and resell a house at an ever-increasing value and ever-increasing mortgage amounts, such that eventually the mortgage amount exceeds the value of the home, sometimes by several times. Now, cashback isn't necessarily a problem if it's disclosed up front. Typically, you'll see a cashback in the form of a decorating allowance when you buy a new home. This is okay. However, you have to keep in mind that the lender will discount the home by the value of the cash back. So if you buy a $700,000 home and get a $30,000 decorating allowance, the lender is only considering the value of $670,000. The reason why developers do this is because the sale still gets recorded at $700,000. So if they're selling a bunch of properties, they don't want to show previous buyers that new buyers are buying for a lower price. Again, Be aware of what this means. Just because you're getting cash back doesn't mean that you're committing fraud, but you do have to disclose it to the lender. Real estate fraud is a huge problem in the industry, but with these simple strategies, you can save yourself from having a really bad day.